So a deck that I wanted to profile, I actually had a very different profile already recorded on GREEDON. That deck was more or less like a combo version of the deck, to whereas it was easier for you to get the triple restand off, or not the triple restand, but like the triple Vanguard attack off, where it's like a double restand. So it was easier for you to get the double restand off, but it was like there was like just some inconsistencies and like some weaknesses it had in certain areas that I really didn't like. So I kind of just scrapped it and I went back to the drawing board, and I guess this is more like the soul version of GREEDON, to whereas it's easier for you to accumulate the 10 soul on your turn 2, to whereas it's easier for you to have the 10 soul by turn 4. But let's get into the deck profile. First thing I did want to note is that I'm not running Diablo's Bad Boy Steve in the deck, or in the ride deck. I used to run Steve. Like, I used to be like, you know, like Steve base god. But I'm running Gooman now, just for the simple fact that there are some decks in the format like that have access to spot removal, whereas it's like Youthberg, Eva, Jiva, Welstra, if you're fighting that one Welstra kid. Like, there's like a lot of decks in the format right now, in my opinion, that do have access to spot removal or removal, to whereas like, oh, that Steve, like, I would rather just take the guaranteed +1 off of Gooman. And the reason that you did run Steve was that it was like easy damage in the early game, to whereas you could get your opponent to 1 or 2 damage by your ride up. But if I'm like, if I'm facing against a deck that does have access to spot removal, like that free draw I get off of Gooman, I don't have to commit it. And if I am playing a deck that doesn't have against spot removal, GREEDON generally just runs like a lot of grade 1s, to whereas you're not really scared of committing like said grade 1 to push for extra damage behind your Vanguard, knowing that they can never touch it. But getting onto the main deck, you are running 3 Persona Rides, 3 GREEDON. You want to max out on GREEDON because there are like moments that you do need to Persona Ride in the deck. Like, there are like some like moments that you have to prioritize getting GREEDON in Soul so you don't die early. But you know, you want to max out on your copies of GREEDON because you do need multiples for your Persona Ride, for your Diet 7 effect, and for your Rhinoceros. So I'm playing 4 copies of the Rhinoceros Desire Devil. He's your main soul charge engine, to whereas if you get 2 of these by turn 3, you will get the 15k on your restand guaranteed, because it will get you the 10 soul that you need. But he's also like a really good attacker, because when he attacks, if you have 2 GREEDONs in soul, he'll get a +1 crit. So there are certain scenarios to whereas you can't go for the secondary restand, but you can call extra attackers off of your rabbit, to whereas you could call this off your rabbit, or this is like your only rearguard you have left because you committed to a full board, to like you put triggers on top of this guy, or if you Persona Road, he's gonna be like, you know, 23 with a crit, 33 with a crit, or like depending on how many of the Desire Devil Alligator you have in Soul, if you did Superior Call him off of the Desire Devil Rabbit. But maxing him out at 4 copies, not much to talk about there. Maxing out on Boku shows, I have seen some lists, and I've played against some lists that like only run 2 Boku shows in the main deck, but you know, I wanted to keep this list as consistent / as powerful as possible, so we are maxing out on our Boku shows. You know, you just want as many as you can in Soul, just for that free 5k power for each. You know, as the game goes on, and they won't always have a PG, you want them to drop 2 to 3 cards every time your Vanguard swings, or you want to force a no-guard situation. So that's why we are maxing out on our Boku shows. And getting onto the grade 1s, we're running 4 copies of the new promo, Desire Devil Bunny. Yes, I know these aren't the real names of these cards, but I'm bad with names, and it's just easier for me to call them like what they are as animals. So 4 copies of Desire Devil Bunny. If you don't know what this card does, because, you know, it's still a fairly new card, I just got my hands on them, like, honestly, not too long ago, maybe like 2 weeks ago max. What it does is, it has an in-soul ability of when your grade 3 Vanguard of GREEDON attacks, you could bind a copy of itself from Soul and Superior Call it from Soul. So for this, you need 2 copies of it, which is fine, because this can either become a key booster if you couldn't get your secondary restand off, or it can just become like the clutch fourth standing rear guard if you weren't able to commit 4 cards to field, which has happened. I do have a GREEDON versus Ava. I don't know if I'm going to show that or not because I did make some boo-boo misplays. But you do want to max this out at 4 copies because it just ups your consistency of getting that secondary restand off, and it's just like a really good to help you generate board in general. And then we're playing 4 copies of the Desire Devil Alligator. Desire Devil Alligator is like one of the best cards in this deck because of its 2 abilities. Its first ability is when you soul charge it for your Vanguard's effect. If you didn't counter, if you have I believe you have to have a GREEDON Vanguard if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, you have to have GREEDON Vanguard for both effects. If you didn't counter charge this turn, you get to counter charge 1. So now you have a counter charge engine. So whereas, this deck can counterblast quite a bit, or it can just not use its counterblast at all. It depends on your combo setup. But its secondary ability, which is the reason that you want to run this card at 4, because it stacks just like Bokusho, but instead, unlike Bokusho, it doesn't power up your Vanguard. It powers up your rear guards by 5k if you superior called them. If you superior called them this turn. I believe it has to be superior called from hand. Let me read this. When your rear guard is placed by a card's ability. So when your rear guard is placed by a card's ability during your turn, for each copy of the Desire Devil Alligator you have in your soul, that rear guard is going to get a plus 5k until the end of the turn. So it's just really good with your Desire Devil Rhinoceros, because if you are able to give him the crit, it's really good that you're able to beef him up with your Alligator. You're able to beef him up by giving him triggers. You're able to beef him up with Persona Ride, to whereas he's not 13k swinging with a crit anymore. He's a fairly larger number swinging with a crit that they most likely don't want to take. So that's why we are maxing out on 4 copies of this. I might change up certain ratios to play Gooman in the main deck, because I really do miss having that 2-card guard restrict. I'm not playing Gooman in the main deck right now, but I'm going for more or less consistency over having that 2-card guard restrict, because if you have multiple Goomans in hand, it's not helping you. You could really only resolve Gooman's effect once per turn and have it be useful. We're playing 4 copies of Desire Devil Rabbit. Now, this Rabbit is the Desire Devil that does let you that does facilitate your double restand combo. Basically, the way it works is you need either 3 rabbits and 3 open counterblast, or you need 2 rabbits and 1 Desire Devil Bunny and 2 open counterblast, or you need 1 rabbit and 2 Desire Devil Bunnies to be able to get your secondary restand off. Now, the way that you get your secondary restand off is before you attack, you have to have a full board. You have to have 5 standing rear guards. You swing, you restand your Vanguard, you soul up your rabbits, and you soul up your bunnies, and then you activate their effects. So Rabbit lets you superior call a card from your hand and then draw a card if you have 10 or more cards in soul for a counterblast. And then, your bunnies, you can bind a bunny from soul to call a bunny when your Vanguard attacks, and then that's, boom. That's 3 more rear guards, plus the rear guard you haven't attacked with yet. So that's 4 rear guards. You could soul charge 4 again to restand your Vanguard again for a 3rd Vanguard swing. This is a 3 to 4 card combo, yes, but it's a very cool / strong play that you can do to win the game. So that's why we are maxing out on the Desire Devil Rabbits and the Desire Devil Bunnies. For the rest of the deck, we are playing... where can I fit this? Where can I fit this? How bad is that? I'm just going to put it right here. We're playing 4 Desire Devil Owl. Now, the reason that we're maxing out 4 Desire Devil Owl in this deck is because it's just very good for soul charging key cards that you do have to discard in the early, or you soul blasted, or whether you healed, you damaged it and then you healed it. It can soul charge your Greedons, when it's soul charged by your Vanguard's effects. It could soul charge your Greedons from the drop zone. It could soul charge your bunnies from the drop zone. That's the main target that I go for. I try to get bunnies from my drop zone into my soul to set up for a secondary Vanguard swing. It could soul charge your alligators, and it could soul charge your Bokushos. So you already have like 3 to 4 targets in the deck that you are able to snatch up into the soul, and it also does help you reach that 10 soul mark. Now, granted, you have to resolve GREEDON's effect before you can soul charge with the Owl, because you can't interrupt effects in Vanguard. You have to resolve them one at a time. So if you have 9 cards in soul and then you soul charge the 10 with Owl, you won't get the 15k. But it is like, like I said, it's a very great setup for your soul, versus playing another soul charger that will deck you out. Like, more often than not, you're using the Rhinoceros's like ability to soul charge 2 like maximum twice per game. You won't need to use its effect more than 2 times, but you do max him out at 4 copies because of its versatility. And then for the final card in the deck, there's really not much to talk about here. 4 DPGs. Now, the reason that we're running DPGs over like 1 Elementaria of Sanctitude, the Blitz Order PG, is because this deck requires you to commit 4 to 5 cards to board every turn. The problem with Elementaria of Sanctitude is, if I haven't gotten the chance to use it, like defensively, it is essentially a dead card in my hand that I cannot call. And I don't want any dead cards in my hand. Like, if it comes down to it, I've called triggers to rearguard to win a game. Like, if I need to win, and I need to call triggers to, like, get my Vanguard's ability off, I'll do it. If I need to call a PG to get my Vanguard's ability off, I'll do it. So 4 DPGs, there's really not much to talk about here. And getting on to the triggers, we run 1 Dark States OT. If you check this offensively in this deck, it's like, this is like another game-winning play. I talked about game-winning plays in my how to choose a deck video. This is like a game-winning play that if you check this offensively, you have that plus 10k and a crit for the rest of the game, that like now your opponent more often than not can't take any of your Vanguard attacks. To whereas more often than not, they could take maybe 1 hit or they could take 2 hits, but now they can't take any of them. Like, checking this, and I've said this before in GREEDON videos, you check this offensively, it kind of immediately turns you into a tier 0 deck. Because now you have a restanding Vanguard with a crit, which no other deck in Standard has right now. Unless you check the Dragon Empire OT and Bafsagra. But no other deck in the game right now has a restanding Vanguard with a crit, which is just like really good and very game breaking. And we're running 3 front triggers, 3 of the 20k front triggers. I was running draws, but like draws it just decked me out so fast. Like, you go through your deck so fast that I just didn't like. The draws were nice, the draws were needed, but I would just rather have the fronts, even though often they miss timing, often they're just shield in your hand. I would rather just run the fronts because it's just not going to deck me out. And then for the rest of the trigger lineup, it's very basic, very generic. We're running 8 critical triggers. We're not running any of the into soul crits, because generally this deck doesn't need the into soul crit, and I would rather just have the 5k in case it does come up that I do need the 5k booster or like the 5k as an attacker. So that's why we're just running like generic crits. And then we're running 4 generic heals, because I don't really believe that Standard has like any good effect heals right now. Like, the format's very diverse, in my opinion, right now, which can kind of be like a good thing, kind of be a bad thing. But in terms of the counter heals, it's kind of a bad thing, because you're either running a dead card that's a 10k shield that would have rather been like a 15k shield, or you're running a card that's only good in this scenario, to whereas like there could be, which has come up, which is why I don't generally run those counter heals anymore, that just that being a 15k could have saved you from losing, and it being a 10k kind of just like lost you the game. So that's just like my little rant on counter heals for now. I know we got new ones. They're booty butt cheeks. There's really nothing else to talk about there. But don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you think about the deck down below. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Later, guys.